Hello, I'm Koprince, Managing Partner of Koprince Law, LLC. Today I'm talking about a very interesting case in which the GAO suspended a quote-unquote frequent protester from participating in the protest process for a period of a year. Citing an abuse of the protest process, the GAO has suspended a contractor. The GAO's unusual action was taken after the contractor in question filed 150 bid protests in the current fiscal year alone. I'm currently speaking in 2016 at the end of the fiscal year. Most of those protests have been dismissed for technical reasons. The GAO's decision also cites, quote, baseless accusations made by the protester, including accusing GAO officials of, again, I'm quoting here, being white-collar criminals and asserting that various federal officials have engaged in treason. The GAO's decision is Latvian Connection LLC. The docket number, if you want to look it up for yourself, is B413442, and the decision was released on August 18, 2016. And that decision arose under a task order that was awarded to Mantech Advanced Information Systems for engineering services. Now, the task order in question was issued in 2013. Mantech completed full performance on January 31st, 2016. After Mantech completed full performance, Latvian Connection LLC filed a bid protest challenging the task order award. Latvian Connection alleged that the agency had erred by failing to issue the task order solicitation as a small business set-aside and by failing to publish the solicitation on the FedBizOps website. Now, apparently this particular protest was the proverbial straw that broke the camel's back. While the GAO's decision addressed the particular task order in question, the GAO focused in large part on Latvian Connection's widespread use of the protest process. The GAO started by explaining that, and I'm quoting here, our records show that thus far this fiscal year, Latvian Connection has filed 150 protests with our office. Of those protests, the GAO said 131 had been decided. One was denied on the merits, and the remaining protests were dismissed, the most common reason being that Latvian Connection was not an interested party to pursue the protest. Further, the GAO said a number of Latvian Connection's most recent protests, like this one involving the Mantech Award, have been attempts to challenge acquisitions where the contract in question was awarded years ago. But it wasn't just the number and nature of Latvian Connection's many protests that drew the GAO's ire. The GAO also found the content of those protests troubling. The GAO wrote, quote, Latvian Connection's protests are typically a collection of excerpts cut and pasted from a wide range of documents having varying degrees of relevance to the procurements at issue, interspersed with remarks from the protester. The tone of the filings is derogatory and abusive toward both agency officials and GAO attorneys. The GAO then continued, and I'm quoting here again, while its protests typically revolve around the two central issues noted above, Latvian Connection also routinely makes baseless accusations. In recent months, Latvian Connection has claimed that agency and GAO officials are white-collar criminals, that the actions of agency procurement officials have violated the Racketeer Influenced and Corrupt Organizations Act, the RICO Act, that various federal agency officials have engaged in treason, the GAO has violated the Equal Access to Justice Act, and that agency and GAO officials have engaged in activities that amount to either engaging in or covering up human trafficking and slavery. The GAO dismissed Latvian Connection's protest against the Mantech Award, both for lack of standing and lack of jurisdiction. The GAO then turned again to Latvian Connection's protest history. The GAO noted that although Latvian Connection has protested hundreds of acquisitions, under which the government has sought a wide variety of goods and services, quote, publicly available information provides no evidence that Latvian Connection has successfully performed even a single government contract. And there's no evidence in the many cases presented to our office to suggest that Latvian Connection engages in any business activity whatsoever beyond the filing of protests. The GAO then stated the wasted effort related to Latvian Connection's filings is highlighted by its latest series of protests, including the current protest, challenging acquisitions that were conducted years ago, where performance is complete and there is no possible remedy available. These protests, GAO said, have placed a burden on GAO, the agencies whose procurements have been challenged, and the taxpayers who ultimately bear the costs of the government's protest-related activities. GAO continued, when presented with evidence as here that Latvian Connection does not hold the umbrella IDIQ contract under which the order was issued, or that the order involves an amount lower than the statutory threshold for GAO's task order jurisdiction, which is currently $10 million, Latvian repeatedly fails to engage with the issues. Instead, the company simply files a lengthy, often unrelated harangue that does not address the threshold issues that must be answered by any forum as part of its review. We conclude, GAO said, that the above described litigation practices by Latvian Connection constitute an abuse of our process, and we dismiss the protest on this basis. Although dismissal for abuse of process or other improper behavior before our office should be employed only in the rarest of cases, it is appropriate here where we find Latvian Connection's abusive litigation practices undermine the integrity and effectiveness of our process. In addition, the GAO wrote, because of these abusive litigation practices and to protect the integrity of our bid protest form and provide for the orderly and expedited resolution of protests, we are suspending Latvian Connection for protesting at our office for a period of 1 year as of the date of this decision. The GAO remarked that it does not take these actions lightly, but, quoting again, nonetheless, on balance, suspending for 1 year Latvian Connection's ability to file protests with our office may incentivize the firm to focus on pursuing legitimate grievances in connection with acquisitions for which there is evidence that Latvian Connection actually is interested in competing. The GAO concluded, and I'm quoting once more, our bid protest process does not provide, and was never intended to provide, a platform for the complaints of businesses or individuals that, to all outward appearances, have no actual interest in or capability to perform the government contracting opportunities to which they've objected, nor as a forum for the expeditious and inexpensive resolution of bid protests are we required to endure baseless and abusive accusations. Now, a reader of the GAO's decision might conclude, after all that strong language, that all of Latvian Connection's many protests have been frivolous. But not so. Those who read our SmallGovCon blog will recall that last year the GAO actually sustained 2 of Latvian Connection's protests involving Fed bid reverse auctions. Now, those decisions established, at least in my eyes, some important precedent concerning agencies' responsibilities when using the Fed bid system. The GAO also sustained a 3rd Latvian Connection protest last year in a separate case, and they confirmed that offerors are not presumed to be, quote, on notice of agency postings on websites other than the Fed BizUp system. All 3 of those decisions can be found discussed on our SmallGovCon blog at smallgovcon.com. In fairness to Latvian Connection, then, it is clear that at least a handful of its many protests have been meritorious. That said, I can't begin to imagine why a single company would feel the need to file 150 protests in a single, not yet completed fiscal year. And while I haven't had the opportunity to personally review the contents of Latvian Connection's many protest filings for myself, I believe that the protest system works best where the litigants, even though they are adversarial, treat each other with basic norms of courtesy and respect. If Latvian Connection failed to meet this standard, as suggested by the various baseless accusations referenced in the GAO's decision, then that failure alone is detrimental to the protest process. The Latvian Connection case may become known for the effect it will have on a single company, but I think it's really broader than that. The GAO knows that allowing abuse of the protest system harms those who use the system in the way it was intended, and it risks political intervention that might harm all contractors' ability to file good faith protests. In a world where 45% of GAO protests result in a favorable outcome for the protester, and that's based on GAO's statistics for the fiscal year 2015, there can be little doubt that the good faith use of the protest system serves a very important public purpose. Contractors can ill afford a congressional rollback of their protest rights. As the Latvian Connection case demonstrates, the GAO itself possesses the inherent authority to sanction what it believes to be an abuse of the protest system, and will exercise that authority in an appropriate and rare case.